Okay, we are live. So, welcome everybody to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday evening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. If you would like to be notified when I go live, you can subscribe to the text alerts that are sent out by texting the words Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999. So, with that said, let me say something in the chat to get that going. How is everybody doing? How was your week? How are things? Marcy is here. Kenneth is here. Marcy says, "Hello, I'm new." Well, welcome, Marcy. We're glad that you're here. And I don't quite know how you found these live streams, but basically, it's pretty casual format. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Uh, and people from the chat also answer. So, uh, yeah, it's pretty cool. So UNA is here. Hello, hello. Oh, well, thank you, Amanda. She says, "I'm trying to help a friend going through the same stuff. I'm glad to see you every time you appear online, and I'm happy to know that you're there." Oh, well, that means a lot to me, so thank you. Victoria is here. Proud mom of two is here. She says, "Cheers, glad to be here." Welcome, Narcissistic Abuse Healing Art Recovery, which is quite the name, but it sounds fantastic and fascinating all at the same time. Says, "This is my first time here. I'm Stacy. Thanks for having me. I found you through Angie." Oh, well, very cool. I remember seeing the name, I guess, was it yesterday? It's a blur, in the live stream yesterday. So welcome, welcome. Changing My Life is here and says, "Hi, Dana. I just got your text." Yes, I was sitting here waiting to start the live stream and I kept thinking, I know I'm forgetting something. I know I'm forgetting something. What am I forgetting? And then at like 7 or what 8:27, I realized, I forgot to send out the text notification. So I had to quickly go do that. So that I normally try to send it out about 10 or 15 minutes early, but tonight it went out about 90 seconds early. So, Bonnie, hello, says, "I have a question. Can you explain future faking?" Sure, absolutely. So, future faking is uh, kind of what the name implies. It's faking a future with somebody. So, it's kind of telling another person what they want to hear in order to keep them around. Probably the most common or yeah, I guess common way of doing this, you might have seen like with scammers or heard about with scammers. They'll tell a person everything that they want to hear. Oh, oh, you're a single mom with 3 kids. Well, for an online scammer, oh, I've always wanted to be a parent. My ex couldn't have kids, or I couldn't have kids, and nothing. I want nothing more than to have that with you. Uh, you want to get married, I want to get married. You want to whatever, start a business, they want to start a business, kind of a thing. You want to do house repairs, they promise to do these things. So sometimes it's intentional and it's malicious, future faking. Sometimes I think it's also unintentional and not malicious. So it could be a person, because here's the thing, whenever we have consequences, so especially if the other person's thinking about leaving, right? They've been in the relationship for a while, things are not, or I guess long enough, I should say, and they're at the point where they're like, you know what, I'm just done. I can't handle this anymore. If they're to the point of leaving, it's very common for the person who's on the receiving end of that to have that wake up moment. It's that rock bottom moment for them of, oh my gosh, okay, you're actually going to leave. And then you kind of see a flurry of activity, kind of them doing everything that you were wanting them to do for, up until that point. It's whether or not that kind of behavior actually lasts is another story. And this is why it's important for you to get clear on like your deal breakers, because change is always difficult and it's not a straight line. And that's best case scenario. So best case scenario, change is a long, hard uphill road. Um, even if a person has the most sincere intentions, it's full of a lot of trial and error. It's, and if you're at the end of, you're barely kind of hanging on in this relationship, and the other person's telling, you've gone through this before. They said that they'd promised drinking. They said that they would promise to quit drinking, or they'd promise to quit yelling or belittling or whatever it is that they're doing, but it just keeps happening. They might sincerely mean that. However, intent, we all want, right? Like wanting to change isn't the same thing as change. So it so trying to parse out, okay, well, what is kind of malicious intention versus benign intention isn't really, I think, that a good use of anybody's time. It's more about focusing on, where are your deal breakers in this? How at what point are you like, okay, you know what, these are the changes that I need to see in this time frame, and if I don't see that, then I need to do something different, because I can't keep going through this. So I see a lot of people in this community, I was there once too, where it's that the focus is, well, you know is this future faking, or is this person really saying what they do? They really mean what they say? Is this person love bombing, or is it love? Is this person really a narcissist, or is this just a bunch of problematic behavior? Kind of like, what am I dealing with here? All of that confusion and that overwhelm kind of dissolves when we can turn inward and figure out, where are my deal breakers with this kind of stuff. And yeah, and then you go from there. So let's see, Karen is here. Hello. Jack and Hufflemom, hello, are here. Changing My Life says, I think our entire relationship was future faking. Yes, and I can relate to that. And sometimes that absolutely is the case. So, um, the two relationships that I primarily talk about here on my channel, the first one was with a guy where it was deceit from day one. Everything was a lie. And I'm so thankful that I found out everything that I did when I did. And I'm so glad that I found it out kind of all at once, because, like anybody else, it's easy, it can be easy to slip into kind of justifying things or trying to make sense of things, especially if you've never come across a person that seems like such a great person, but is so full of deception and malicious intent. Uh, so yeah, and the first guy that I talk about, that was all deception. It was the long con. Like that was the goal. He thought I had money that I didn't have, and um pretended to want the same things in life, and pretended to be kind of this perfect partner for me. And um you know and it he wasn't any of that. And um my guess is continues to morph into whatever the next target wants him to be, or is looking for, I should say. Um, and then same thing, a couple years later, the second guy that I crashed into, it was the same thing, just deception from day one. And although I do think his level of deception, it was intentional, I don't know how malicious it really was. Selfish, yes, absolutely. Um, I think he was also kind of deluding himself. I don't know. It was very strange. Regardless, like totally not workable with that. Like how it just, yeah, like that level of deception and um selfishness you know, that's it. When I found that out, I was done. Devastated, but done. Let's see that me. Okay, that's a great question, Huffle Mom. She says, actually, let me move the screen up here. There we go. That's a little better. How do you build back confidence after it's been torn from you by abusive people? I'm so tired of letting fear rule me. Okay. Well, I would start by examining in what areas do you feel this lack of confidence? Because odds are there's probably some areas that you're more confident in than others. So let's say, for example, perhaps you're really confident about baking banana bread. Okay. But maybe you're struggling with confidence when it comes to trusting other people, or when it comes to your appearance, or when it comes to uh, your, I don't know, your ability to learn a new hobby, to stick with something, something along those lines, or parenting, or whatever it might be. So kind of getting clear on what ways does this lack of confidence uh, manifest, because everybody's going to be different with that. So kind of once, awareness is always the first step, and it's always, I think, the hardest part of it. So getting clear on how is this issue surfacing in your life, and then you can start figuring out ways to then work with that. So generally building up confidence. um, well, and then okay, let me back up. Then I would say getting clear on, well, if you did have confidence in this certain area, how would you know, and how would somebody else know? So in other words, like what in what ways would your thoughts and actions be different? So then you're kind of getting this clear on the direction that you would want to be steering into. So for example, if there's low confidence about your appearance, it might be, well, gosh, okay, if I had really good confidence, I'd stand up straight. I'd look people in the eye. I'd feel more comfortable naked around my husband, right? Or I'd uh, I'd feel less self-conscious in a swimsuit. Um, I would wear more, I don't know, form-fitting clothes, or clothes that have more color in them. Um, I'd put more time and effort into, I don't know, certain parts of my appearance, whatever that might be for you. So kind of thinking about it that way. And then um, it, I wish I wasn't struggling with anxiety so much, so we could do book club tomorrow. The book, I don't know if you guys read it, and I will try to pick this up later. I don't know what's going on with me. I'm just been, like I said, I've been struggling with a lot of anxiety lately, and it just comes on out of nowhere. So um, I'm just not as reliable as I want to be right now. Anyways, okay, that's kind of a side note. But the book that we were supposed to be discussing for tomorrow is called um, uh, You Are Why You Eat. And I'm going to butcher her name, and I'm just going to apologize ahead of time, but it's by Dr. Ramani. But last name starts with the D, I believe. She's fantastic. The book really gets going. If you're doing the audiobook, it's about 5.5, 6 hours in is when the book, in my opinion, really gets going. And she asks a ton of fantastic questions and very insightful questions. Anyhow, so if you're struggling with confidence, one of her tips in that book has to do with, and I guess this would apply to any to any area that you're trying to gain traction in, but she calls it a one a day thing. So basically, and you write this down. So you're in effect, you're keeping a success journal. And in this journal, all that you're writing down is what is the step that you took in the direction that you want to head. So for example, in the examples she gives in the book. So let's say, for example, if you're trying to move towards uh, losing weight, okay, then it might be that uh, you, uh, let's see, you didn't buy candy at the grocery store, or that you gave away all the sweets, or that you only ate half of the sandwich for lunch. And then, let's say a big sandwich, you only ate half of that sandwich for lunch, and then you ate the other half for dinner, or that you went for a 10-minute jog or a 10-minute walk. It doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be small. It's just kind of whatever you were doing that's moving you in that direction. I absolutely love this tip by her. And I love the suggestion of writing it down, because making changes in any way, shape, or form, like physical changes, losing weight, that's kind of a more concrete thing, right? Like we can look at the scale and tell, is what I'm doing, is it making a difference? Are the numbers going down? It's more difficult to measure progress if it's something kind of nebulous like confidence, right? So I think that's where it helps to get as clear as you can ahead of time. Like, how will you know? What are some of the signs that you're going to know that you're on track towards towards getting more confident? And then how are you going to know when you're there? Because especially when things are kind of more nebulous like that, it's definitely not an event. It's going to be a pattern of changes that you're going to have to make, and it's going to be over a prolonged period of time, and odds are there's still going to be some struggle there. Again, that's the kind of the challenge with something that's more vague like that versus let's say if a person's goal is to something that's more concrete, let's say to stop drinking alcohol. Well, that's a pretty binary thing, right? It's either you are or you are not. So okay, I'm not drinking. Okay, now I just got to keep on not drinking. With confidence, there's this ebb and flow. There's going to be some days where you have more confidence, and then there's going to be other days where you don't have so much. And on those days where you don't have so much, it's not necessarily, uh, kind of this deep psychological issue. Sometimes it can be hormones. Sometimes we can just be in a bad mood. Sometimes it can be the weather. It can be all kinds of, we might be triggered by something. I mean, who knows? There can be all different factors at work. Um, so yeah, kind of getting clear on what having confidence would look like, writing down all of the steps that you're taking in that direction. So how that would look in terms of Dr. Ramani's concept of one a day would be uh, that you notice, let's say I don't know, you're in the grocery store, and before um, there was maybe, I don't know, maybe you were feeling ashamed going to the grocery store. Gosh, I hope I don't see anybody here. I hope nobody's noticing the food that I'm putting in my cart, these kinds of things. Whereas now you're like, nope, I'm going to go to the grocery store, and you have your head up high. Even if you're buying the same food or doing the same thing, you're making that step in that direction of confidence of, yep, I am on the path of changing my life. And maybe that's all you do is just make eye contact with people, and you decide, you know what, I'm not going to live in shame anymore. I'm on the path to making better decisions and changes. That doesn't mean that I can't love myself along the way, right? Um, so writing that in the journal, or if you were to swap out, I don't know, some sort of sugar bomb cereal for a green smoothie while you're at the grocery store, then writing that down too. And so you're building momentum. And the other great thing about this is, for those times where you feel like, man, I'm just never going to get there, or this has taken forever, you can go back to that journal, to your success journal, and you can read all of the changes that you've been making. Because here's the thing with improving, like I was saying, improving kind of these more vague, um, less definable concepts is, um, when you're, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. When, what was I saying? When you're trying to improve, It's gone. It's gone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it'll come back. Shoot, what was I going to say? Confidence. I'm so sorry. Well, I hope you got something out of that. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Um, Marcy says, I feel like I can break up with someone and leave them, but how do you break up with a parent? Yes. And narcissistic abuse healing art recovery says, many people don't understand narcissistic abuse. And she's talking to Marcy now. She says, but I can't speak to the specifics of your situation. Yes. And this is kind of one of the challenges with this. Well, in terms of quote unquote breaking up with the parent, it's going to involve navigating your boundaries over, okay, what are some differences that you need to see in this relationship? So even though it can feel like, well, but this relationship's different because it's with my parents, it really isn't. It really isn't. It's the same process of getting clear on what is working for me, what is not working for me, and then what do I need, what changes do you need to make? Because it's about knowing what do we have control over, what do we not have control over, and then focusing or doubling down on what we do have control over. So, and then doing that. So if you're like, gosh, my relationship with my mom is really draining, um, gosh, she calls me 4 times a day and it's just too much. And she just comes over unannounced or uninvited, or, she's just kind of doing stuff, whatever it might be, then figuring out, okay, where is your line with that? Some people go completely no contact with a parent and they just say, you know what, I can't have this in my life anymore. And these are my terms. Like I would depending on the relationship with your parent of, you might, if it's a decent relationship, but there's kind of no respect for boundaries, then saying something like, gosh, mom, you know what? I really love you and I enjoy kind of X, Y, and Z about you, but A, B, and C, it kind of isn't working for me. And so I'd love to see you, or the kids love to see you, but if you could please call ahead of time, or like, let's arrange a time. Or you might even offer up, how about we get together Sunday afternoons? That'll be our time. And then you say, this way I can kind of prepare myself. So I have energy. I'm awake. I'm, uh, kind of, I set that time aside. And do you see what I'm saying? So you're kind of framing things in a way that works for your boundaries. If you have a parent who their behavior is just so destructive, and some people in here have that, where their parents have done very egregious things like stolen their identity, taken out loans, tried to make them sick for attention, these kinds of things. If it doesn't even have to be to that extreme, by the way, too, in order for you to go no contact, it's completely up to you. But I'm just saying, for some people, the behavior is to such an extent where trying to negotiate any of it is only further putting themselves in harm's way. So with those kinds of parents, sometimes you're best off to just say, I can't have this in my life and I need for you to not contact me again. And then to change your phone number and potentially file a restraining order. So it's all on a big spectrum. It is the main challenge with, I think, setting boundaries with parents in general is the fact that it's the shift in that dynamic. So because, we grow up with, as kids, where we're kids really, at least, I don't know your age, but it's kind of a new thing where kids are allowed to have boundaries and they're allowed to speak up and say, hey, you know what, this doesn't work for me. Or I had my feelings hurt, or I don't want to finish my plate, or uh, they're allowed to have more of like individuality in the thought process. Whereas I think those of us that are older definitely did not grow up like that. So, um, if you had, kind of a difficult or a demanding parent and you weren't ever allowed to be assertive and that was shot down, or anytime you disagreed or had an issue with anything, they argued with you, or they dismissed it or just invalidated it. Oh, other people have it worse, or oh, I had it worse, or whatever it might be. Then, um, you know, it's actually having boundaries, being assertive, and having those boundaries be respected is completely foreign territory. And so that's kind of the the challenge with that. It's as we move into adulthood, at least here in the United States, it's more of this understanding of, okay, now our relationship, the parent-child relationship, is going to change to some extent. And it changes in the way of, yes, while I might still be your child, now I'm also an adult with potentially my own family. And uh, we relate to each other with that adult level of uh, kind of mutuality and respect. It's not that I'm the child and you're the parent, and therefore I have to do everything that you say. Like, no, I'm not 6 years old anymore. Like, I'm 26 and I've got a kid and I've got a job, and it's no. But that's very, very difficult, especially when if you have a parent that's difficult and demanding and kind of this high conflict personality. The thought of speaking up or standing up to them, it can be absolutely terrifying. So I guess I would anticipate that it's going to be very nerve-wracking, and um and to try to kind of rehearse the scenario in your head of what might you say, what boundary do you want to set, what might they say in response to it, and by that I mean what kind of pushback are they going to give, because anticipate that. And then and then how are you going to restate your boundary with them. So let's say you say, mom, it's too much. You're, uh, you know, if we could just see each other on Sundays, that would be great. That way I can kind of plan for it and I'm not tired from work, or I'm not trying to get the kids ready, or whatever it might be. And your mom says, well, I can't believe this. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to call if you come over, and you're just being ridiculous. I mean, Jane's daughter would never do this, right? Kind of guilt trip and shaming and kind of throwing everything at you, obligation and all the rest, to uh, to anticipate that, and then to have a comeback to it of, well, you know, uh, this isn't this us me wanting to meet on Sundays or wanting you to call, before you come over. It's not to punish you. It's just so I can plan for it better in my schedule, because um, it's just it's too much with trying to coordinate, the unknown of when you might show up, and uh, other things I have going on in my life. So I don't know. Does that kind of help give you some pointers in that direction? So narcissistic abuse. Thank you for the live stream donation and the cute little emoji. That's adorable. Marcy says, she's more like abusive with her words and she's dominant. I'm 44, but she still wants to treat me like a child and control my every move. I can't disagree or she'll let me have it. It's very scary. And yes, it's very sad. Okay. So in that kind of a situation, realizing she's not only is she treating you like a child, and I don't mean this um, in a rude or dismissive way at all. This can be very eye-opening. We all go through this, okay? But she's treating you like a child, but you're also responding to her like a child. So it's that wounded, it's that scared little child inside of you that's responding to, it's the, oh no, I made mom mad, I'm going to get in trouble, I don't want to be in trouble, oh no, oh no, oh no, what is she going to do? And and I get it. It's all of those feelings of it, and it feels almost unbearable, right? Of, oh, I don't want to deal with this conflict. I don't want to deal with confrontation. She's going to make my life a living hell. It's easier to just go along with whatever she wants, and instead of standing your ground. That's manipulative behavior on her end. And your response of, I'd rather just go along with whatever in order to get along, that's a trauma response. That's absolutely the result of growing up with a very domineering parent who doesn't respect your boundaries at all and who sees you as an extension of herself. So learning to be assertive in general, it's something that takes time and practice. It's definitely one of those skills that I think is easier practiced kind of in the shallow end of the pool, so to speak. Starting out right out of the gate with, or I guess to go with that analogy, like jumping off the high dive and going right into assertiveness with a high conflict parent, that is probably the most challenging situation out there that you could start with. So practice assertiveness in the ways that feel like there's less at stake, or that, yeah, I guess that kind of feel like there's less at stake. And it'll start kind of building momentum in that direction. But here's the thing, when people struggle with assertiveness, it can feel it can feel like, okay, well, these low stakes situations. The low stake, hold on, I think I just lost a super chat. Oh, shoot. And I don't know how to go back and find it. Oh. Yikes. I'm sorry, you guys. You'd think I would know all this by now, but I don't. Okay, so I'm sorry. What was I saying? What were we talking about? Assertiveness. Oh, low stakes situations. Oh, actually, real quick, whoever sent that last super chat, I apologize that I didn't see it. If you could please let me know in the chat, and I will acknowledge it. So I'm sorry. Okay, so back to Marcy, what we're talking about, low stakes situations. So low stakes situations, it can either be a person that there doesn't feel like there's this deep emotional investment in. So let's say, for example, the cashier at the gas station or at the grocery store, they make a mistake. They bring up the price wrong, and I don't know, it's $1 more. It's a low stakes situation to say, oh, you know what? Actually, I think those blueberries were $2.99 and not $3.99. You're being assertive. There's not much to lose there, right? It's a kind of, nobody's emotionally invested in the price of blueberries, and you don't know the cashier. So kind of okay. Like, okay, if she gets irritated with me, then so be it. It still might be uncomfortable. I mean, I don't think most people like other people getting annoyed or irritated with them, but it's bearable versus somebody that you have to see every day or somebody that you're related to. Uh, letting your mom know, hey, it's kind of a lot for you to just drop by unannounced or kind of uninvited. I'd love to see you, but this is just a little much. If she doesn't handle your boundaries well, then it might be like, oh, great, here we go. Now there's going to be hell to pay. She's going to give me the silent treatment. She's going to call my brother crying. She's going to threaten. She's going to tell me that I'm a terrible daughter. She's going to say that, all kinds of things, whatever it might be. So that's a higher stakes situation. So practicing with the low stakes things. But here's the thing with those low stakes things, because they're so low stakes, it can feel like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll just let it go. And so then we're not getting the practice because we just think, oh, it's just not worth it. You know what? I've had a long day. I just don't care. An extra $1 for the blueberries. Who cares? I just want to go home and eat said blueberries. It can feel like, not worth the effort of being assertive. this isn't to say that you have to kind of be assertive every single time. Kind of take every battle head on. Sometimes it's okay to let things slide. However, it's a problem if you're letting things slide all the time, and if you're telling yourself, okay, you know what, uh, but those bigger deal things, that's when I'll be assertive. Well, probably not if you're not comfortable being assertive with the little things. So, just some just some things to think about. So, okay, let me see here. Oh, well, thank you. Changing my life, says Dana. I deeply honor and highly appreciate what you do. You are light. Oh, well, thank you so much. And I deeply honor and highly appreciate what you do in terms of helping people reclaim their space and their life. I just think that's such an awesome thing. We still need to connect. I know I keep saying this, but I do mean it, because I would love that. Um, I speak my truth, says, do you guys always follow your intuition? And if so, has it always been right? Mm. I haven't always followed my intuition. And there's been times where I have followed it. It's hard to say. There's been times when I've followed, well, there's been times when I followed it and it hasn't been right, but it was still the right thing to do. So, for example, this one time comes to mind. Uh, Back when I was living in an apartment, um, I came home. I came home one night. I had to pee so bad. I came home one night and my front door was wide open. And I was like, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Like, what? Did I forget to close the door? Because that could very well happen. Um, Strange, but maybe I didn't close it all the way. Just was the repairman over? Like, what's the scenario?" And I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And I was like, "Dana, do not go inside. Like, you need to go in a bush around back if that's need be. You need to call the police. Like, err on the side of caution and call the police, even though there was a good chance that maybe I just didn't pull the door closed hard enough or whatever." Sure enough, the police got there, and it was nothing. And it turns out in time, it was that the building, I guess, had settled enough to where even if I did shut the door, it wasn't catching in the lock, and it kept swinging open. So I had a funny feeling that something was off. It turned out nothing was off, but it was still enough of a concern. Something was still out of the ordinary that it was worthy of me taking action on. Um, with that said, there's been other times where I've had, uh, gut instincts about people, but because I took action, I'll never know like if that was the right thing to do or not. I gave this another example that comes to mind, and I talked about this a couple years ago. I was out walking a friend's dog, and uh, I had my earbuds in, and this older guy, was by his garage, and he starts walking down the driveway talking to me. And I didn't realize it because I had my headphones in. And um, anyways, so I kind of stopped and was chatting, but I just got a funny vibe about the whole thing. Like, he kept trying to get closer to me than I was comfortable. And I'd back up and he'd come a little bit more forward. And it wasn't like he had a hearing issue. It just, the whole thing felt really uncomfortable. And the old me would have stood there and entertained this guy, this conversation that I didn't really want to have. I was clearly on a walk. Um, you know, uh, the old me would have waited until the guy was done talking at me, not even talking to me, talking at me, it, and then thinking I needed to be polite. And I would have just stayed there and humored him and smiled and nodded until he was ready to go back to whatever it was he was doing. The, you know, the me at that time I guess the newer old me, uh, was like, this doesn't sit right with me at all. And I, I was making it very clear, like, hey, I'm kind of on a mission here, walking the dog. Like we were walking briskly. It was and so I just smiled and said, well, you have a good day now. We're just going to continue with our walk. And I kept going. But that situation really unnerved me. Now, if to tell that story to somebody else, we can justify that in any number of ways. Oh, well, what's he going to, he's older. What's he going to do? Oh, it's probably nothing. It's probably this lonely older man. Well, maybe, but I don't need to know his intentions to know that it makes me uncomfortable. And that's all I needed to know. So I did what made me comfortable, which was, okay, you have a good rest of your day. We're going to be on our way. I have no idea if his intention was to try to, it felt at the time like he was trying to get close enough to me to grab me. That's what it felt like. And I, and again, we could justify that, right? I was a psychiatric nurse for quite a while. I've worked with, um, therapists now. I've worked with all kinds of dangerous situations that have escalated quickly where, could I have been hypervigilant given given my personal past and given my professional past? Yeah, possibly. Again, doesn't really matter. I'm not comfortable with it, so uh, that's it. The point of what I'm trying to say is it's about figuring out what's comfortable for you and what's uncomfortable for you. When you can have that be your focus, it takes away the confusion of gut instinct. Here's the thing too, the more you actually get in tune with kind of what problematic behavior is and when your boundaries are being crossed, the more you'll be able to articulate what it was specifically that made you uncomfortable. And then it won't feel so vague, so mysterious. Like, oh, I don't know. My spidey sense was just going off. I just wasn't comfortable. They'll be like, no, you know what? Actually, this person was crossing my boundaries. I don't know. You had a date with them. You'd made it very clear that it was going to kind of go down one way. They kept pushing it. You said, I don't know, you wanted to meet for coffee. They kept trying to have that go into, I don't know, having dinner with them or meeting them at their house or, any number of things. So the point is the more you get clear on where your boundaries are, the more clarity you'll have when they're being crossed. And the more grounded you get and realizing I only need to validate myself. Like my boundaries, they're not to punish somebody else. They're about me. They're about you, right? Like our boundaries are an individual thing. They're for us. They're designed to help keep us safe emotionally, physically, financially, sexually, you name it. And because of that, we don't need to worry about what another person's intention is. It's only whether or not this works for you or not. So, oh, okay. Thank you, Huffle Mom. She says, Marcy don't. Oh, I think I said Marcy donated. Oh, no, I didn't. I was talking to the um, narcissistic abuse person. Marcy. Okay. So Marcy says, donated a live stream donation and said, thank you. Well, thank you, Marcy. I appreciate that. She says, I'm a rock star. Yes, you are. Well, so thank you. uh, let's see. Let me scroll. Cha. Scrolling. Okay, let me scroll down. You mad? Great point. Says, when I first started practicing my boundaries, I used to feel guilty. This is very common. Yeah. Because it feels like we're doing something wrong. right? That's what that emotion of guilt is. When it's appropriate guilt, when we experience appropriate guilt, it's we feel bad because we did something wrong. That's appropriate guilt. Inappropriate guilt is when we feel bad when we didn't do anything wrong. And that's when we're feeling bad when we didn't do anything wrong. That's more often than not a big sign of blurred boundaries. So we're feeling responsible for things that we're not responsible for. So remember what I was saying? Your boundaries are for you. They're to keep you safe. They're not to punish somebody else. And it can be very difficult when we assert our boundaries and somebody else has, let's say, hurt feelings about that. Or let's say we really like them. Let's say you have a coworker. This was my situation on an ongoing basis. I had some really awesome coworkers, and man, we used to work and go overboard with that job because there was major stuff on the line, like people's lives, and uh, so a lot of times it was people were picking up. Everybody was burned out, picking up extra shifts. We're trying to help out, and there was this sense of um, kind of camaraderie and responsibility because we liked each other. So, and we liked our clients. So it was like, man, it was really hard to say, you know what, I can't. I've got plans. I've got plans tonight, or I need a day off. Like, I can't tonight. Because then it was this feeling of, oh man, they're going to be doing this on their own. They're going to be slammed. But the reality is, it's not reasonable to expect a person to pull double shifts and to do all these things and to work when they're incredibly burned out. It's just not work. It's not good, right? So yes, there's that feeling of guilt. Even if we don't like the person and we're setting that boundary, it's if our boundaries were never uh, kind of validated or respected, it's this feeling of, I'm rocking the boat and rocking the boat is wrong. And so therefore we feel bad about that because we don't feel like we should kind of get our wants and needs met, but only other people should. And so to kind of move past that, it's practicing getting uncomfortable or practicing getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it helps to realize, okay, gosh, you know what? I am going to go tell this person that I can't do this thing, or I'm going to say to, mom, we can only see you on Sundays. It's just too much otherwise, or whatever it might be, realizing that's not going to go over well with them. And that's okay. You're not responsible for how they respond to it. Again, it's going back to what do we have control over? What do we not have control over? We have control over how we assert our boundary. So if it's a person who is, let's say, not dangerous or destructive, so we're asserting a boundary with them. A coworker that you like, we'll just use that scenario. Then saying it tactfully of, you know what, I am just so fried. I need a day off. And so maybe I can help out next week or whatever it is, but just in holding your line, like, I can't do this, or saying, no, I can't do this tonight, but you know what, this is an ongoing issue. I really think we need to talk to human resources about things, or talk to management, or we need to do something different because this just isn't working for anybody. And then realizing it's going to rock the boat, and that's okay. So all you can do is state your boundary in a tactful way around, reasonably emotionally safe people. And then it's up to them to soothe themselves if they're not getting their way. Your coworker, even though you might be work friends, they might be annoyed. They might roll their eyes. They might protest. Really? I've done nothing but doubles all week long. Really? Like, you can't even pick up this extra shift? No, I can't. You've been working a lot too. It sounds like we need something to change. This isn't sustainable. So if you say it tactfully, and then if you still feel guilty afterwards, which you might, in time you won't, because once you start realizing, no, my boundary, it's a reasonable request. It's reasonable. It's not infringing on another person. It's not trying to control another person. It's coming from me trying to guard my energy, emotions, time, self, whatever it might be. Then in time you get so grounded in that, where you realize that if anybody there's pushback against that, then it's the other person that has the issue. It's not you. You know, if your neighbor's upset because you ask them, I don't know, let's say your neighbor, let's say you buy a house and the neighbor next door was friends with the owner before and they have a key. And then you realize that neighbor is coming into your, or you have suspicions that that neighbor is coming into your house when you're not there. Or maybe you just don't even really, you don't know the neighbor. Like you don't want them to have a key. And so uh, maybe you ask them for the key back and they get upset with you. Like, no, completely reasonable request. That's on them. That's weird that they don't respect that boundary. And uh, well, and in that situation, I would just recommend changing the locks anyhow, because you never know who else has keys. But do you see what I'm saying? So when you realize, yeah, this is, I moved in, I don't know this person. I don't want them having a key to my house. I'm not comfortable with this. If there's pushback from them, then that's on them. Like they have the blurred boundaries, not me. So, okay. Uh, and with somebody else, so I was just talking about setting like being assertive and being tactful with how you're communicating that. The exception to that is if a person is dangerous, destructive, deadly, you have a really bad feeling, you're uncomfortable, you know, it's a first date, like the uh, the neighbor next door, something, there's a vibe, something's making you uncomfortable. I'm not saying that you need to be rude, and frankly, I'd recommend that you don't, because people that are dangerous and destructive or deadly are unhinged, and you don't know what they're going to do. So there's no sense in, you know, waving a red cape in front of them. Um, those situations, sometimes and oftentimes the best boundary is to go no contact. So to just be done, you know. So if, I don't know, like that situation, you find out the neighbor has a key, the neighbor kind of gives you the creeps, or you just decide, I don't even want to ask for it back. I don't know this person. It doesn't matter anyhow. I just want to change the locks. You can do that too. Somebody's kind of, you're on a first date, you're getting weird vibes, and you want to be done, then excusing yourself, you know, I don't know, talking, calling an Uber or driving yourself home or whatever. You know, you don't like the old me, like you don't need to just stand there and wait, like wait for concrete proof that uh, that this person does in fact have bad intentions. Like if you're waiting until you have concrete proof, you've waited too long. So being uncomfortable is enough of a sign that something different needs to happen, regardless of what anybody else thinks. I can't tell you, there's been so many different situations, you know, in my life, and I'm sure you've experienced that too, where uh, other people just don't see a problem as a problem, you know, and thankfully they don't need to vote. It's, your life is not a democracy. So it doesn't really matter if they, oh, I think that's what I was talking about earlier, is that internal validation. Like once you're able to validate yourself and be like, okay, nobody else needs to agree with me. Like this is a problem for me. And, you know, if they don't agree with it, then that's fine. I'm still going to take the action that I feel that I need to take, because I don't want to be uncomfortable. That's it. It's not to punish the other person. It's for you. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Linnea says, don't date your neighbors. LOL. Yes, that's a good rule of thumb. I would agree. Um, let's see here. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. That's a great way to view it, Kayla. She says, the consequence of not being willing to assert boundaries is not something I'm willing to set myself up for. That is what pushes me through the discomfort. Yeah. And that's a great way to think about it. Because here's the thing, when there is discomfort present, we either kind of discomfort begets more discomfort. So if there's discomfort present, we either, or somebody's doing something uncomfortable, okay, we can either bring it up and assert ourselves, which can also be uncomfortable. Um, but we're making a mistake if we think that, oh, I'm just going to say nothing. I don't want to rock the boat, because that's not keeping the peace. That's taking that discomfort and it's putting it inside of us. So just because we don't say anything doesn't mean that that discomfort has gone away. It hasn't. In fact, it's probably grown, because now we're going to be thinking about that situation. We're going to be rehashing it. We're going to be, uh, irritation is going to start to bubble, resentment, frustration, anger, um, and not to mention, if we haven't made our boundary known, then depending on kind of what the boundary is, they're probably going to keep doing whatever it is that they're doing. They're going to keep crossing that line because we're not saying anything. We're not letting them know, like, hey, that's not okay with me. So if our strategy is hope instead of assertiveness, hope is not a good strategy. So if a strategy is, well, I'm just not going to say anything, I'm just going to hope they'll one day somehow figure it out. I'm going to hope that one day somehow they're going to figure it out, that it's not okay to talk to me like that, or to touch me like that, or to make for certain requests, uh, you know, or I'm going to be more, so that's passive, or I'm going to be passive aggressive. Well, I'll say yes, but I'll somehow settle the score later, right? They ask a favor, I say yes, but then I don't show up late, I stomp around, all my body language says I don't want to be there, like this kind of thing. It's not worth it. It's difficult being assertive, but it's probably, I think, frankly, in time, it's more difficult being passive. It really is. Um, oh, I think I was going to say something earlier too. We were talking about when kind of confronting an intimidating person, difficult, demanding person, whether it's your boss, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's a parent, sibling, whoever it might be, significant other, whoever. If it's that feeling of, um, that we feel like we're a child in that situation, it can help to try to slow things down and ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? Because when we have that response, it is that fear response. It's coming more often than not, it's coming from a younger place within us. It's that fear of authority or fear of consequences. When you realize, wait a minute, I'm 43 years old, and my boss, who's, I don't know, 55 years old, let's say, an adult, like we're both adults, uh, what am I afraid of? Is it I'm afraid they're going to be mad at me? Well, okay. Then, well, what if they are mad at me? Then what? And then kind of playing that scenario through. Well, what if they are mad at me? How would, what would that look like on their end? And then what would it look like on my end? How would I respond to that? Um, Well, okay, but what if they don't want to be my friend anymore? Okay, well, let's examine that. What if that were to happen? What if saying, but then you have to kind of ask yourself too, again, playing it through, if you saying no or setting a boundary of, gosh, I can't watch your kids this weekend, or I can't keep loaning you money, or I can't, um, I don't know, keep covering your shifts at work or whatever. If you putting your foot down and just saying, this isn't working for me, if that causes you to lose a friend, then they're not a friend anyhow. That friendship was only one-sided in their favor. They were just being nice to you because they were using you. So getting clear on, are you actually losing a friend in certain situations? If your friendship is completely reliant upon you being agreeable, you saying yes to everything, then that's not a friendship. That's you being used. So yeah, but playing it through. It's very interesting when we start examining what exactly is it that I'm afraid of, and um, and then playing it through. It takes practice. It takes practice, but it's something that can be done. Let's see here. Let me. Jack is asking about the one of the meditations that I did a while back. He says, could I get a version without the background music? He says, the Huffle mom finds the music distracting. Is it the volume of the music, Jack, or is it just the music in general? Like, would it be better if it was just like white noise or something, or rain? Okay, let me scroll down here. Oh, totally. Narcissistic abuse, healing art recovery says, sometimes I get so damn frustrated with circular conversations, so I avoid them. Yes. So with that, this is a great example of having a boundary. And I've talked about this before. One of the big game changing moments in my life was that realization of, you know what, I don't want to, and I don't need to engage in situations that cause perpetual confusion, crazy making, or ongoing mental anguish. Circular conversations are one of those things. It's all of the above, right? So and it can be so hard to unlock horns with somebody and just be like, okay, time out, we're done. Uh, because it can feel like in the moment of, we're kind of torn between, I really want to double down on my communication and make my wants and needs heard. Like I want them to see things from my point of view, because my point of view, according to us, right, according to me, is right. I want my neighbor to understand that it's not okay for him to keep coming to my house. And he keeps spinning it around, making it seem like I'm crazy, I'm paranoid, I'm making a big deal out of nothing, I have the issue, blah, blah, blah. Like I really wanted to shake him and have him see that this is agree with me, right? Um, if you are in a situation where the conversation then turns into a power struggle and it's not getting anywhere, so both people, you're not being heard, uh, and um, like, especially when it's again, it helps if you have a good footing and bound in what healthy boundaries are, uh, where you're trying to explain the basics of adult behavior to another adult. Absolutely, then it's time to just disengage and just say, okay, well, I guess we're not going to get anywhere, so I think this conversation's done. and then walk away. If it's somebody that's, let's say, a coworker or, and real quick, Cynthia, thank you for the live stream donation. I am going to copy your question before I lose it and put it into a Word document. Hold on, everybody. Okay. uh, so if you're in a circular conversation, circular argument, really, with somebody who, let's say, a significant other, that's a pretty common one. And that happens no matter how, no matter how good our communication is, it can happen, right? Uh, when things start going off the rails and it becomes very clear we're not, any added communication to this isn't clarifying things, it's only getting us stuck further in the mud. It's time to just disengage and shelve it and just say, you know what, um, I'm heated about this. It seems like you're heated about this. Or even you could just make it about you. You know what? I have tried my best to communicate my point. It's not getting through for whatever reason. I don't feel like we're communicating effectively at all at this point. Let's just shelve this conversation and can we pick it up in a few days? And if they say, no, I don't want to go to bed angry, I want to talk, we need to figure this out and da 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 da, then restating that and just saying, you know what? No, for real. This, we're not getting anywhere. We've tried communicating this effectively. We're going round and round. And I'm to the point where I'm so tired, or I'm getting so frustrated that I don't think any resolution tonight is going to happen. I'd be more than happy to pick this conversation up again tomorrow, this weekend, whenever, uh, because it is important that we figure it out, but it's not going anywhere tonight. And again, you're not waiting for them to agree with you. At that point, you're letting them know, like, no, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And then you back off. Because sometimes certain people just want to fight. Like they're not looking to reach a resolution. Or if they really have such a skewed understanding of boundaries, where they don't respect yours at all, then that's such a bigger issue than the conversation at hand. And that's the bigger issue, is they feel entitled to get their way, and they don't respect your boundaries. And that's a huge problem. So yeah, just getting distance from situations like that. Yep. Narc Abuse Healing Recovery says, I say I'm just not engaging in this conversation. Yep. That's a good one. She said it's all about power and control. Yep. Absolutely. It's a big turning point, I think, in our healing when we realize, you know what, I don't just have to stand there and take it, or I don't just have to, that you can, and your life will be much smoother if you set the pace. Doing so doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you self-absorbed. It doesn't make you a narcissist. It means that you are reclaiming your power and your autonomy and your sense of agency in your life. Being like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be a passenger in my life anymore, letting other people dictate when things start and end, and dictate my life, the events of my life and how things play out. I'm going to take the wheel. I'm driving now. It's my life. So, uh, like, we can, and it's so much easier said than done. It really does take time and practice. It takes time and practice with asserting ourselves. So like getting into conversations, opening the door to conversations. And it also takes time and practice with backing out of conversations. So you assert yourself, let's say high conflict person, it doesn't go over well. There's a lot of pushback. There's pushback. They want to argue. They want to start talking about, well, gosh, I did this thing for you 16 years ago and I can't, but da, 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 da. And again, it's all of these issues start piling on. You're an adult now. Like you can say, you know what, this is this is the issue that I want to talk about. It's clear it's not getting resolved. Um, there's other stuff that maybe we do need to talk about, but I want to focus on this one issue. And if that, basically, and if that can't happen, then we need to call a timeout, because now it's just, we're that this tornado is picking up speed and it's not going to go anywhere productive. Oh, you're welcome. Dulce Sueños says, Dana, thank you for introducing the concept of thinking about the fear of what happens after setting a boundary and then following it through. Yeah, you're very welcome. And I've mentioned this before, one of the most interesting classes I had when I was in my master's program was, it was a crisis and trauma counseling. And we used to do these role plays in there. And it was all about working with people that were in trauma and crisis. And in part of that was delivering bad news. And so we practiced that. And it was such a great experience, because you kind of, the way that we all think that we would handle something and then the way that we actually do handle something is oftentimes two very different things. So we would do these role plays where we would have to practice telling somebody, uh, gosh, I need to file a report, or with Child Protective Services, or I think that you're a danger to yourself and I need to break confidentiality and, uh, you know, call your emergency contact, or kind of, this is what needs to happen. And this is what's going to happen, but not coming at a person in a condescending or, obviously not, right, or an authoritative kind of way, but conveying difficult to hear news in a tactful, compassionate, direct way, and then bracing yourself for the aftermath of that. You've got a parent yelling in your face, or a teenager who's might be suicidal, and you can't do this. My parents are gonna kill me. They're gonna be so mad at me, and da 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 da, and all of those emotions that come up with that, of wanting the best for this person, um, and realizing you have to do this thing. It's for their highest and greatest good, even if they don't agree with it, or even if there's other consequences that are going to come from that. It's really, really difficult. And that was one of the things that instructor, that professor, one of the things that we would practice is, if we start finding ourselves, and a lot of us did, because a lot of us, when you're uh, in kind of whatever helping profession, a therapist, a social worker, a nurse, whatever it might be, teacher, um, especially when you're a mandated reporter, it tends to be kind of this helping persona where we just want to help, right? Like we want other people to be happy. And that kind of personality tends to be a low conflict personality. We don't like conflict. We don't like confrontation. And the effect of that for a lot of people in the class, myself included, was the default was to start apologizing. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just so sorry. I need to do this. I hope you understand, and please. And I'm just, gosh, and so it took, it helped to think about ahead of time of what wording am I going to use, and I need to not apologize for it. Like, I need to be very direct, um, and compassionate and empathetic, but not apologizing, because you're not doing anything wrong. So yeah, like, it takes time and practice, even for professionals. Okay, so let's see. Let me scroll up. Okay, Cynthia, here we go. Thank you for the live stream donation. And she says, what is the best method of trying to say goodbye to a long-term relationship that you share grown kids with? I guess I would want to know, kind of some more context. So, like, what would be the most difficult part of that? Is it the long-term relationship with that person, or is it the long-term relationship that you've had with the children? if I'm understanding it correctly. What's the best method of trying to say goodbye to a long-term relationship that you share grown kids with? Yes, I guess I don't know. Are these like biological children? Are they stepchildren? Or are they, uh, children that you've been around for a long time and that you have this connection to? Yeah, I guess I would want to know kind of what there's potentially a lot of difficult pieces to that puzzle. So I would want to know what, um, in your opinion, you feel like that would be one of the more difficult things for you. Okay, with that person, not the children. Is this person is this person a reasonably safe person? Or do they have a past of being controlling, abusive, high conflict personality, these kinds of things? And I guess when you're playing it through in your mind of saying goodbye, how do you think that they would respond? Okay, it would be saying goodbye to your significant other, not biological children. Do you feel safe in this with that person? Safe enough? Or do you think saying goodbye, mm, is that gonna entail, like, are they out of the house? Um, do they have kind of unpredictable behavior? Uh, I guess do they know the relationship's over? Like, is there a divorce already and now it's just saying goodbye? Or is this letting them know that you wanna end the relationship? Okay, is this person still in the house? Cynthia says, "In the past, they've been abusive, but now they just won't take no." And she does feel safe. Yeah. Are they in the house? And I guess then the question would be too, is whose house is it? Um, here's, and I don't know if you're responding or not, because I can't tell if you're typing, but if it was me, um, if assuming this wasn't, maybe it was like a shared apartment or a shared house or whatever. Uh, okay, that thank you for that information. She says, I've moved, but because we share grown children, he's constantly trying to reconcile. Okay, so this makes it a lot easier. So if you are out of the house, you have your own place, this person's just not taking no for an answer, then yeah, it's a lot. Well, it's still challenging to assert yourself, right, and have that boundary, but it's a lot easier than trying to get somebody else out of your house or, uh, you know, um, having to deal with them if you have minor children and you're going back and forth. So the next time that this person contacts you, I would put it in writing. So either in text message or email, and just say, I have told you repeatedly that I do not want to reconcile. I would appreciate you respecting my boundary on this and do not bring it up again. We do share grown children together. I would like for us to have, uh, an amicable dynamic to where, if I see you, I don't know, at a child's wedding or at a grandbaby's birthday or something like that, where we can be civil. But I need to move on with my life, and I feel in order to do that, we need to not have any further communication. And I wish you well, and uh, I wish you well. Signed, Cynthia. And then if he contacts you again or responds to that message trying to push back again, well, I can't believe that you're not going to just give me another chance and da da da. And I've done so much for you and you can't even do this for me. To say, you know, dear John, um, I said this is my boundary. If you contact me again, I'm going to have to look into getting a restraining order. I mean it. Do not contact me again. And then potentially save the messages. Say if you have anything else on email or phone or whatever, because you're going to need stuff like that for a restraining order. Uh, then go from there. But you want to have some sort of paper trail. Okay, well, and you can acknowledge that. Cynthia says, I feel somewhat clouded as I did allow some intimacy and now I feel guilty. Okay, well, you can acknowledge that. Dear John, uh, I'm I'm sorry if my intention was never to send mixed signals. Uh, you know, some intimacy happened. Uh, it shouldn't have. And I think it's best that we both move forward in our lives. And, in order for me to do that, I need to cut off communication. And I wish you all the best. So acknowledging, like, yes, this happened. It shouldn't have happened. Uh, you know, it's what's done is done. I didn't mean to send mixed messages. You know, I think we just need to move on. So, yeah. Let's see. Scrolling. Um, okay. Let's see here. Bonnie asks, what do you do when the narcissist throws you under the bus and tries to triangulate grown children? Well, that's difficult. So when you've got, not only is the boundary blurred with one person, it's blurred with a couple other people too. So they've found their way into that. Uh, Real quick, Cynthia, thank you for Livestream chat. She says that was very helpful. I'm most grateful. Well, I'm glad, and good luck with that. I know it's uncomfortable untangling from situations like that, and especially if there's that feeling of, oh gosh, I was kind of the one that reopened the door, and but you can do it, and it's the most compassionate thing that you can do for both of you, because then it also lets him know, okay, he needs to move on. It's not doing him any favors if he still feels like there's a chance. So being really clear with him, it's a good thing for both of you. So, okay. So Bonnie, okay, so you've got a narcissist triangulating grown children. If the kids, I guess it depends on how aware the grown children are with the situation. If they're coming to you and if they're coming to you about stuff that is not their business, right? Or it doesn't involve them or shouldn't involve them, um, then I would make that clear in a very compassionate way. Like, I'm really sorry that whoever it is, uh, the difficult person, my husband, my mother, my whoever, uh, that they spoke to you about this. This isn't, um, I can imagine that this is very stressful. You guys don't need to get in the middle of this. This is between me and this other person, and we will work it out. Uh, like, I appreciate your concern. Or if it's something where the other person's manipulated them, saying complete falsehoods, uh, then addressing those. Well, no, that's not accurate. That's not what happened. Uh, you know, it upsets me that this person spoke to you about this because they're making something, they're bringing you into a situation that, uh, they're kind of overcomplicating your life and you don't need that. So, uh, yeah, and I guess if it's more of like a manipulation thing on their end, then, uh, just trying to untangle things with facts and truth. And that doesn't always work. Okay, so that's the challenge with this, especially if we're talking about, like, if it's like your ex, right? If kids have grown up around this, and that's the challenge with when you have a kind of a very high conflict or a manipulative, let's just say it that way, a manipulative person who feels entitled and they're upset and, um, they're spinning things to make themselves look like the victim because they don't have boundaries. They don't have healthy boundaries. So, uh, they feel, I don't know, whatever it might be, that they're entitled to your money, or that you somehow owe them a place to stay, or that you, um, I don't know, whatever, you caused them to lose their job because they were blacked out drunk and you couldn't wake them up. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if they're not being appropriate accountable for, like, what's on them, then, and if the kids are buying into it, and if the kids are buying into it, then they have some blurred boundaries too. So if they're like, gosh, mom, yeah, you should have totally, how come you let dad sleep in? Like, he's always like this. He drinks till he blacks out every Sunday night. And you didn't wake him up for work. And I can't believe that you'd let him, you sabotaged him. He lost his job because of you. Like, that's a deeper issue. This shows really blurred boundaries across the board. So, and that's just kind of one situation, but, and that's difficult. That's difficult because it's not just that one scenario. It's that whole way of thinking, of realizing who is responsible for what. And this is the challenge when people start to change things and they're like, you know what? Okay, I'm tired. I'm tired of getting blamed for everything. I'm tired of being a doormat. I'm tired of being responsible for everybody else. And, uh, you know, like, it's just, uh, I'm tired of it. And I'm going to start being assertive, and I'm going to start saying no, and I'm going to start putting my foot down and setting some boundaries. That does not go over well. And that is the challenge in dysfunctional families, is it's the whole kind of crabs in a bucket thing. So if one person starts making progress, to other people, they don't like that. It changes the dynamic. It's like, well, gosh, I liked you so much better when you just let me have my way. Right? Like, okay, well, yeah, who doesn't? Everybody. It's life is so much easier when people just give us what we want all the time. But, uh, you know, it it that's not a win-win situation. And, so it can be setting boundaries with other people that are not used to you having boundaries. It's going to feel like punishment to them. And the only thing that we can do is to try to explain to some degree of, uh, kind of, this is my boundary. It's not to punish you. This is about the kind of protecting me, or whatever it might be. Um, you know, and owning it. Gosh, you know what? And again, it totally depends on the situation. Like, um, um, yeah, there's some, maybe just even mentioning, like, there's just some really blurred ideas about accountability and responsibility and this family. And that's the thing. Like, when when the more passive members of the family start getting a backbone, they start asserting themselves, they start putting their foot down, um, a lot of people, the dynamic radically shifts in the family. It often gets a hell of a lot worse before it gets better. And sometimes it doesn't get better in the sense that other people don't come around. Other people might drop off, and it might radically change your relationship with them to where they stop talking to you. And that sucks. But it sucks even more when you're walking on eggshells, because that way of being the constant doormat, being the emotional punching bag, being the scapegoat, that's not sustainable either. So even though there might be some sort of relationship, and I use the word loosely, with other people, if it's only that relationship, if that relationship's only there based on your compliance, or of you playing the role of scapegoat, then it's not healthy for you. And so there comes that point of having to decide of, okay, what am, uh, what am I going to do? Either way, it's going to cause pain. It's going to cause pain to do something different, or it's going to cause some pain to radically change these relationships with family members and risk that they might not come around. It's difficult, but yeah. Huh. Well said. Bonnie says, yes, boundaries is a dirty word in a dysfunctional family. Boy, is it. That is very well said. Yeah, Huffle Mom was saying, yeah, I've already said this once in this live stream. She says, Jack and I have had to set boundaries with in-laws 3 different times now. They each time they said, oh, well, you're overreacting. She says, oh, shake my head. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, okay, and we're telling ourselves this internally, and maybe we even say this externally too, of, well, you don't have to agree with it. Like, you can think I'm overreacting. I don't. I wouldn't recommend saying that out loud. That's just going to add more fuel to the fire. But that's the thing. The boundaries, other people don't have to agree with them. Sort of like, this is not okay with me. If they're like, well, gosh, let's say again, you have an in-law who, uh, I don't has a key to your house, and they just come over whenever, and that's not okay with you. And they might say, oh, well, you know what? Your brother has no problem with this. And I'm over there 3 times as much as I'm over here. I hardly even ever see you. I can't believe that you would just do this to me. I can't believe you would just leave your mother hanging with no, poor me. This is so terrible. How could you possibly do this? How did I raise such a selfish child? Your brother's nothing like this. It's like, okay. Like, well, I guess that you're going to go over there, because I can't, it's too much. It's too much. So, we'd love to see you, but on Sunday afternoon between 2 and 4, you know, there you go. So Joni says, thank you for the live stream donation. She says, as a teenager, my mom would give quote unquote advice regarding a guy mistreating me by telling me to mistreat him as well. It was a weird sort of game. Have you heard of that, or what would you call that? Yes, I would call that a game. So I think you nailed it. That's what that is. So it's passive aggressive behavior. So somebody's treating you in a way that you don't like, and instead of directly handling it, being assertive and having a boundary of, it depends on how the person's mistreating you, right? I mean, if it's it's on the more mild end of, gosh, we said we were gonna, you were coming over at 6 o'clock and it's 5 o'clock. You're an hour early, and it's like, oh yeah, I just wanted to see you, like that kind of thing. That making it known, or if it's mistreating you in the sense of calling you names, uh, hitting, kind of more like, well, and the thing is, everybody's boundary varies, but I don't know how what you're talking about in terms of like mistreatment. But that kind of stuff, it depends on where your deal breakers are. So uh, I don't, and I would recommend deal breakers. Everybody needs them. Everybody has them. Most people don't really know where they are, but everybody needs them. So if a person's mistreating you, uh, and again, depending on where that behavior, what it is, where it lands with you, if it goes into deal breaker stuff, then you don't need to be assertive in the sense of letting them know, gosh, you know what? It's not okay with me that you're calling me all kinds of names, or that you're punching holes in the wall, or that you're stalking me, or that you're doing this. Like, no, you don't need to entertain that. You can just either say, you know what, this is not what I'm looking for in my life. We're done. Or you can just go no contact. So mistreating somebody back, that's that passive aggressive behavior. Oh, you did something I don't like. Well, I'll show you. We were supposed to go out on a Friday night, and we had a date, and you didn't show up. And so let's say then you call me Saturday with some sort of, I don't know, excuse, but I heard from other people that you were running around with another woman, or they saw you at, I don't know, out at the bar with another woman. Um, and now you're lying to me. The solution there, that would be deal breaker stuff, right? Um, the solution there isn't to try to figure out, oh, what happened. You know exactly what happened. And the solution there isn't to then be like, okay, I'm just gonna play like nothing happened, but then I'm gonna go try to flirt with a guy at the bar in front of him and make him jealous. No, it's just getting caught up in the web even further. So it's dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional. And there's different types of behavior, and it can help to kind of maybe classify what's what to see it more clearly. So you have behavior and communication that's passive, which is I'm going to do nothing. I'm just going to allow this. I don't want to rock the boat, kind of a thing. You have passive aggressive, which is like what I was to say, oh, well, this person did something. I'm not going to handle it directly, but I'm going to handle it indirectly. They left, he left his favorite sports jersey over here. Well, I'm going to pour bleach on it, or I'm going to go key his car, or I'm going to, I don't know, post it on social media or something. Like you're handling it, you're kind of settling the score, but you're not handling the issue. Then you have aggressive behavior. Well, I think that maybe would be more kind of aggressive, but aggressive behavior, uh, pushing, shoving, getting loud, intimidating, um, basically using intimidation in order to get your point across, threatening to leave, uh, but not in a deal breaker way, like threatening if you kind of, so maybe that's not the best example in that situation. It's kind of the, if you don't do this, then or else kind of a thing, or punching holes in walls, throwing things at the person, threatening to tell call their boss and let them know that they used drugs last week. This kind of stuff, wanting to cause them harm. Assertive behavior, it's direct and it's tactful, and it's basically letting the other person know, like, this isn't working for me, something else needs to happen, or this isn't working for me, basically goodbye. But again, that caveat there is always that the only part that's different is if they're dangerous or destructive, you don't need to have this tactful communication where this doesn't work for me, and I just think I need to let you go. Da, 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 da. You don't need to do all that. You can just simply just disappear. So, uh, okay, so let's see. But this kind of stuff, I wanted to bring up one more point about this, Joni, is this is a great example of how the stuff that we learn in our families, we learn how to communicate. in our family. We learn how to have relationships with other people. We learn our place uh, in society. We learn our self-esteem in large part is kind of this learned thing that comes from childhood. We learn so many things that we pick up on levels that we're not even aware of. And so this is a great example of one of them of, okay, this is the message that was, and here's the thing too, we pick up these messages in either directly or indirectly. So this is a great example of a direct message of your mom saying, okay, this is how we handle dating. When somebody treats you in a way that you don't like, you just get back at them, right? And then we take that message as, okay, this is just how we do this. And it's not oftentimes until we're older that we realize, this isn't a functional way of doing things. I'm going to do things a little different. And so let's just talk about that real quick, kind of the difference between functional and dysfunctional, because that can cause a lot of confusion. People are like, well, what is dysfunctional? Like, isn't everybody kind of dysfunctional? Aren't all families kind of dysfunctional? And I mean, I thought dysfunctional meant like abusive or drugs or alcohol. Like, I didn't have any of that in my family. So could it still be dysfunctional? And the answer is absolutely yes, it can be. So the word dysfunctional, it's when you break it down, it literally means not functioning. So it's a not functioning dynamic. And what that means, so what is a non-functioning dynamic, right? A non-functioning dynamic is one that's not kind of running smoothly. And so in terms of relationships, it's oftentimes it's communication. So there's that breakdown that communication is not functioning. This cannot function in a wide variety of ways. Actions are not functioning. Things are not solutions oriented. They're not team oriented. Uh, People are getting their wants and needs met at the expense of others. There's a bunch of secrets. There's a bunch of gossip. There's a bunch of like that indirect communication. You hear it through the grapevine. There's blurred boundaries. Um, you know, just outrageous expectations, hard feelings, resentment, all that kind of, it's a complete breakdown of uh, to where that family is not functioning in some way, shape, or form, or multiple ways, or not functioning in multiple shapes and forms. So a functional dynamic is, and this isn't about doing things perfectly either. Um, but it's a functional one is where there is that ability to be team oriented. There is that ability to work team oriented and solutions oriented. So again, it's not about finding this perfect person or creating this perfect relationship, but the people involved need to be growth oriented to the extent of uh, that they're able to be accountable, that they're able to see their own part in things. And I'm not saying, when I say part in things, I'm not saying that you somehow caused, uh, abuse or something like that. Like, no, that's not it. A person's part in things in terms of what do they have control over? That's what our part in things are. What do we have control over? What do we not have control over? And I should add to that too, it's where is our level of appropriate control? So an appropriate responsibility and what is inappropriate, right? So navigating that, if we're treating another adult, if we're quote unquote protecting another adult from experiencing consequences of their actions, then that's enabling. That's a blurred boundary, and it can seem nice in the moment. So like the example that I gave earlier, if somebody's upset, oh, well, gosh, dad drinks till he blacks out on Sunday nights. Mom, you didn't wake him up. It's all your fault. He lost his job. Okay. If you've got kids saying this, there's some blurred boundaries there because they're saying that you're somehow responsible for this guy's drinking, your husband's drinking and getting him up on time and all of this. No, you're not. You're not his therapist. You're not his mother. He's an adult. He's got a drinking problem. And this is one of the hardest things kind of shifting things around from non-functional, from dysfunctional to functional, is it's going to require uh, assigning appropriate accountability and setting boundaries, and then letting other people deal with their own upset, their own hurt feelings about things, and to kind of work through that. So if you've ever been a part of like a 12-step program, that's letting that other person hit rock bottom is a big part of it. That's where change happens, because that's that point of, I'm not doing this anymore. We might have been doing this for 30 years. I'm not doing it anymore. You have a problem with alcohol. You need to get help. The solution isn't for me to spend any time trying to wake you up on Monday morning so you can function and get to your job. The solution is for you to get into some sort of recovery and to be accountable for yourself. So that's really difficult. And a lot of people feel, oh, that's so mean. I would never do that. I would never kick out my child. I would never, give an ultimatum like that to my husband. I would never do that. It's like, okay, well, uh, you say that, but you will find your boundaries at some point when you've had enough. So it's not only the person with problematic behavior that has to hit rock bottom, it's those around them that have to hit rock bottom where they say enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. So it's a challenge. Okay. Narcissistic abuse healing art recovery asks, is it a good idea to report narcissistic abuse after we've gotten away, even if we haven't endured physical abuse? That is a great question. And I would say it really depends on the situation. Um, I guess, I think probably perhaps like the most blanket answer that I can give to something like that would be, if you have any questions about that, you can always, and I would encourage you, call non-emergency police in your area and ask. Say, I dated this person. This was a year ago. Um, there was never any physical abuse, but there was a lot of emotional, verbal, psychological abuse, or there were threats or whatever you experienced. And I'm debating if I should make a report or not, and talk to the police and find out, okay, what are some pros and cons with that? Most of the time they will talk to you about that. Um, again, there's so many different factors at play. Some of the pros to that can be, if you're scared of that person, um, uh, there's now a report on file in case something did happen. Uh, I don't know. It's a challenge. I don't know. And it probably varies from police department to police department, just depending. This is why I'm saying I think you're best off contacting non-emergency police. I don't even know if all police departments would even file a report on something that happened that long ago when there's no evidence of it. Um, and I don't want to give you wrong advice. The other thing to consider too is, with a report, you need to put your name and your address on it. So um, if it's going to go like on the record, right? So like, let's say, for example, if you're just concerned, I guess this person keeps driving past my house, I think it might be them, I'm not sure. And asking them, can I just make an anonymous report? Can you guys just do some more drive-bys in the area and just kind of safety checks, this kind of thing? See if you're scared of this person, you don't want them, and you've moved out of the area, or you've moved away from the last place, and them having your new last name or your new location could potentially put you in harm's way. That's something to consider, and that's unfortunate, but that is something to consider. So yeah. Let's see, let me scroll up here. Um, Oh, that's such a hard one. Excuse me. Huffle Mom says, Dana, Monica was asking your honest opinion on how to handle racism or other types of attacks, um, like to us or to others. She wants to know if she should stand up or stay quiet. This is so hard because there's a big part of me that really agrees with that statement that silence is complicity. And there's certain things, racism, kind of hate crimes in general, uh, violence towards anybody, really. I feel like we need to stand up and say something, because if we're all waiting for somebody else to say something, then nobody's saying anything. So there's kind of like that opinion I have on one hand. The other one is the kind of like, I guess you kind of wanting, how do you go about making something, bringing light to a situation or bringing awareness to a situation in the safest way possible? So definitely thinking about that. Um, it's because it's not so easy to just say, to stand up for some sort of injustice, whatever that injustice might be, and say this is a problem. Um, there can be some very real, you can put yourself in danger that way, especially, I don't know. I don't like making decisions based out of fear, uh, because I do think it's important that we speak up. Eh, But I also, with that said, I do believe in doing it in the safest way possible. So, and kind of thinking through some of the ripple effect to that, and then anticipating that, and then coming up with some sort of plan for that. So let's say, for example, um, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. Let's say, for example, you live in a small town and there's uh, racism present, and it's directed towards you, or towards anyone. Let's just say, for this example, towards you. If uh, and let's say the person that you're experiencing this is somehow best friends with the chief of police, right? And the chief of police is also like, that's deep roots of racism in this small town, which is probably not as much of a hypothetical situation as we would all like for it to be. So, we giving voice to a situation is important. That's how change happens. But then also realize, man, if it's going to potentially make your life an absolute living hell and put you in danger or your kids in danger, then I'm all for saying something. But you might also want to consider, you know what, like, getting some distance. Like, maybe it's kind of, I don't know, worth getting some sort of distance, and whatever that might look like potentially changing a job, potentially moving. Um, it just depends on the degree and the frequency that we're talking about. How unhinged are these? How dangerous are these? Or deadly are these other people? Um, and I know it doesn't. It's not right and it's not fair, but at the same time, like, your safety does matter. I've dealt with this many times, not with racism, but like with targets of abuse, where it's unrelenting, and they've tried to get it to stop, and it doesn't. And this person's just so dangerous, so destructive, so manipulative, that they've had to either change their name, or they've had to move to a different city, or both. uh, and like I said, it's not right, it's not fair, but sometimes it is what it is, and we have to do what we have to do in order to feel safe. But if it's a situation where, um, yeah, I don't know. Like, it depends on how deep it goes, and if sometimes let's say you have a work environment or whatever, or let's say you have a child who's getting bullied by a teacher saying racist things to them, and If it's mainly related to that teacher, but there's more support, like there's more kind of level-headed people on the principal or the school board or other people in town. Like if it's just kind of um, you know, there's that potential of, okay, this could actually get addressed and resolved. And then, it's great. I don't know. It's just such a hard thing. It's such a hard thing because like I said, it, I, I don't, it's important that we stand up, right? Like it's important that we say, hey, this is not okay. I'm such a firm believer in that. But yeah, finding a way to do it in a safe way. It's going to be uncomfortable and it can really rock the boat and it can be very divisive. So I guess just kind of playing it through, like, okay, if I'm going to kind of kick this bee's nest by saying something, I need to have a plan before I do that instead of just kind of hoping for the best, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, Warrior says, what about a grown man whose parents have groomed him to be responsible for their grown disabled other son? So basically have groomed him to be responsible for his disabled brother. If boundaries are expressed, the family makes all hell break loose. Okay, so here's the thing with boundaries is boundaries are really only effective if there's consequences. So if we're just continually expressing boundaries, then at some point we're just kind of screaming into the wind, right? So this is why it's important to think to kind of play the scenario through of, okay, what is the boundary? And then how are you going to back it up? So for example, back to the situation we were talking about earlier, you've got a parent who comes over, they have a key to your house, they come over whenever they want to. You allowed this to continue for 15 years. Resentment has been building up. You absolutely, you're always on edge because this parent, it's space invasive, right? So you just never know. You're like, I can't walk around the house in my underwear. I can't just sleep in till noon because I never know when, this person's going to show up at my house and start making demands of me. Like I have no privacy in my own home. You can ask that to say, gosh, mom or dad, I'd love to see you. If that is the case, Sunday afternoons, that can be our time. We'll have lunch together. And if they don't honor that, then you change the locks. Right. So, or you say, I can't, you're calling me 4 times a day. I can't talk this much. I've got work to do. I've got the kids. Da, 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 da. They don't respect that. They keep calling, that you stop answering. And then you reiterate, I can't talk during the day. So I'll call you, or I can't, it's talking every day is a little much. I'd be more than happy to talk to you a couple times a week. But it'll be after, I don't know, 7:00. Like you have your boundaries, but then you have, and I say consequence, that sounds like it's a punishment, but so I wish there was a better word. There's kind of a strategy that you're going to implement, I guess. The boundary is saying, here's what needs to happen. Like, this is not okay with me. And then here's what I'm going to do. Here's kind of the follow through with that. And then you let it go. So if your parents are expecting you to be responsible for your brother, whether he's disabled or not, that's not your responsibility. And if it's too much for them to be like, and if they had this mindset, oh, well, gosh, family's forever, family helps out. Your brother has these disabilities. He can't live on his own. He needs, gosh, we need you to be here 10 hours a week to help take care of him. We need you to, whatever it might be. And you're like, this isn't working for me. I have my own family, or I have my own life, or whatever. Then saying, okay, it sounds like we need to do something different because this isn't working for me. I love my brother and I want him to have a great life, but let's look into, let's figure out what resources we have. What are our options? And if they're like, well, I can't believe you would do that. You would really go have a stranger come into the home and help take care of your brother. Really, you can't do that. And da 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 da. He loves you so much, and I can't believe that you would just do this. They're gonna anticipate that, you know, and hold to your guns of like, okay, you know what? I'm an adult. I have my own life. I love my brother. I'm not his caregiver. That's not my job. It's too much for me. And I love my brother. I want to support my brother, but but I need to have boundaries around that. Like I want to be able to love and support him in a certain capacity. The the expectation of me to take care of him in whatever capacity, if it's too much, it's too much. And that's okay. That's okay. And they don't have to agree with that. All you have to do is hold that line and realize um, this is not your burden to, and I hate that. I don't mean that in a, when I say burden, I'm not referring to your brother. I'm referring to their expectations. Their expectations are not yours to carry. We'll put it that way. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should or that you have to. It's reasonable and appropriate to have boundaries. Like I said, I was a nurse for quite a while, and I was a hospice nurse at first, and then I did psychiatric nursing. And even though I was a nurse and had all kinds of training in nursing and caregiving and all of that, that doesn't mean that I couldn't have boundaries around that. And you have to, for your own sanity, to maintain your own life. So I don't think you were around, but like my dad died Thanksgiving 2019. Gosh, seems like it was only 3 months ago. And I had to get boundaries around that, because at first it was like I was the only one that knew how to do a lot of things, because I'd been a hospice nurse before, so my other family members didn't know that, and it was burning me out. And so I finally was like, you know what? Okay, guys, I'm not trying to be a martyr, and I'm not trying to be a hero, and we've got to get some sort of plan. We've got to get some sort of plan. And it was one of the best, not only thing that I did for me, because I really needed it. I was absolutely exhausted to the point of almost crying because I was up around the clock, but it brought us together so much more closely as a family, because it was empowering other people of, okay, we're gonna have to do this in shifts, and we're going to have to start communicating effectively, and we're going to have to say when something's working, when something's not working. We're going to have to communicate about this. That's it. So it's the same. And I know that there can be so much guilt and obligation involved when it's like, gosh, but this person's dying, or gosh, this person has disabilities. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be a jerk. I don't want to be all these things, but it's reasonable and appropriate and healthy to have boundaries, and be like, okay, here is where my line is. I'd be more than happy to do X, Y, and Z. And when we do that, then we're taking action from a place of um, uh, kind of excitement and inspiration, and uh, compassion for the other person and compassion for ourselves. Like there's that balance there where it's like, I really want to do this. If it's not an act of compassion if it's coming from this place of obligation, or fear of consequences, or fear of an argument, or fear of conflict, or guilt. Then that's where all that resentment comes from, and it builds up. It's just absolute poison to people. So just something to think about. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Kayla says, oof, letting others have their reactions to our boundaries is so much easier said than done. It is. Especially when you're like, man, I know it's coming. Like it's going to be kicking a bee's nest. I'm going to say no, then there's going to be hell to pay. They're going to create this icy silence. There's going to be all this tension. They're, you know, uh, it's just going to be unbearable, right? Like they're going to be, it's just going to be tense. And man, I know what's coming and I don't want that. That it's awful. But it can realize too that you don't have to just sit there and be uncomfortable either. So it's you know, that behavior is only effective if we let it be. It's only uncomfortable if we let it be. Sort of like it, and it's the adult version of a temper tantrum. So it's the same approach. If you've ever been around a little kid, let's say a 2-year-old who doesn't get their way, and you know what's coming, tears, screaming, they throw themselves on the floor. They start saying all kinds of stuff. You're so mean to me. I hate you. You're the worst mommy or daddy ever. And and they're throwing out all the stops, right? And you're like, oh my God, the first couple times you feel terrible. You feel terrible. You're like, no, don't say that. I love you so much. Like, I'm so sorry, but you can't have ice cream for dinner. Like, or no, I'm sorry. You can't eat that bag of cotton balls. Like it's not good. You're like, you're trying to rationalize with somebody that's not being rational, right? Um, and so the first couple times it's really difficult, but then when you realize, okay, this is them, this is this is on them. I need to do what I need to do, uh, and giving into their demands isn't helping things any. So they're going to say what they're going to say. They're going to do what they're going to do. And in time, this is where it takes time and practice. You get to the point where you're like, you know, okay, well, I guess we're just going to carry you out of the store. Like, I don't know what to tell you. This is on you. Like, and you kind of act unaffected, right? Like you don't give into it because it gives that little kid power. You might say something like, yeah, it's very clear you're really upset. I know you really wanted to eat that bag of cotton balls. I know you thought it looked delicious, but you can't eat cotton balls. It's not good for you at all. At all. Then we'd have to go to the doctor. Or if they're just not having it, they're not having it. But we don't have, the point being, we don't have to internalize, and our lives will be much better if we don't internalize the behavior of other people. Just because they're upset doesn't mean that we need to be upset. That's a game changer. Realizing they didn't like that when I told them no. My parents, I don't, whatever the situation might be. My brother wanted me to, I don't know, watch his kids for the weekend. And I couldn't. I said no. And he got really upset and was, whatever the situation might be, right? Realizing, wow, like this person's really entitled. And then either nipping that in the bud right there and just saying, wow, you're making it sound like I somehow owe you this. Like, this is a favor. This is I want to do this, or I don't want to do this. Not that I have to do this. So maybe this is worthy of another conversation down the road. But kind of just setting that straight and being like, okay, well, yeah, this person's really upset. Okay, that's on them. I'm not upset. I don't need to make this about me. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad sister. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I don't like his kids. It doesn't mean any of that, right? It's just, this doesn't work for me at this time for whatever reason. You're tired, you have a headache, you want to watch the game, you are going out of town, you just want to sleep. Like, I don't know, whatever, you know? So let's see here. Monaco says, yeah, my daughter can say horrible things to me too when she's angry. She would even pull my hair. I used to get riled up like anything. Yeah, situations like that can be really anxiety inducing. Absolutely. I had a friend of mine, man, talk about just the most patient person I think I've ever met in my life. She is just so awesome. Anyways, she was her and her husband were fostering. They decided to take in a foster child, and they had probably one of the worst experiences ever. They took in a little girl who had a reactive attachment disorder, and this little girl was incredibly behavioral. They gave them no training on working with the child. It's called RAD, a reactive attachment disorder. They gave them no training on it, um, and it this little girl was just off the chain. I mean, meltdowns nonstop. Smearing feces on the wall, coloring on the wall. She was so behavioral that she had her own aide at school, and they would vacate the classroom. They couldn't even get this little girl to leave the classroom. They had to vacate all of their students out of the classroom until she would calm down and then people could come back in. She was this little 6 years old, incredibly manipulative. She stole stuff, and she would have these meltdowns. um, she would say like all kind she it was like she was trying to get him arrested. She would say all kinds of stuff, and she knew exactly what to say that would, and of course other people, when you see people are like kind of snickering at them and like, oh, I can't believe that parent can't control their child. And of course they don't know, right? They don't know that this is a foster child who's um, incredibly traumatized and has had this really rough go of it, and that their approach is the correct one, and it's whatever. And so, and I just thought, oh my gosh, my friend just has so much patience and to deal with this so calmly and to not internalize it. And I said, Mike, how aren't you scared that somebody's going to call the police? Because this little girl would say stuff like, you're not my mom. Help, help. She's trying to kidnap me. She's trying to take me away. Stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God, and my friend had other kids. I was like, you're not scared that like somebody's going to call the police or something's going to happen. And my friend was like, we thought about that. We thought about like the consequences of this. And we realized, okay, if the police get called, then we explain to them what's going on. Like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, um, so yeah, kind of not internalizing stuff. And she's like, we're not bad parents. We're not bad people. We're definitely not trying to kidnap this little girl or cause her harm. She's just upset because we told her no. And she's pushing limits. Let's see. Monica asked Dana, is it normal for narcissistic a mother to withdraw support and help from the so-called black sheep? If we don't enable them and stop being a supply, do they try to isolate you? I don't know about necessarily like isolate, but yeah, when you have a manipulative person who's entitled and who has a really poor sense of boundaries, right? And it's that one-way street. And uh, that's that dynamic of the relationship. It's sort of like, okay, I'll give you this if you give me that. So it's not giving help from a place of no strings attached. It's basically putting a down payment on some sort of request later on down the line. That's a problem. And it's a problem when people do that. And not only narcissists do that, lots of people do that, thinking, well, I've watched your kids, I've watched your kids every weekend uh, for the past 5 years. And I have to go out of town and I want you to watch my kids this weekend. And you said no. Well, you owe me because I've watched your kids all the time. And it's like, well, no, like that doesn't work that way. There's nice when there's that give and take, and it's important to have like it kind of changes things if it's a one-way street. But when there's that expectation of, oh, I'm going to call in this favor at any given time and you better say yes, then it's not a favor. It's a person that's keeping score and stocking stuff up. So it's uh, it's much better to go about it of, okay, I'm going to say yes when I mean yes and no when I mean no. And there's going to be no strings attached. And if I'm going to watch this person's kids, it's because I want to watch their kids because I enjoy their children, or I'm trying to help a friend out or whatever. If they repay the favor, that's great, but there's no expectation of that. Um, yeah. So doing things without expectation, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So with people that keep score like that, it's very much of, well, yeah, I'm helping you out because you're helping me out in some way, shape, or form. So if you stop helping me out, then I'm not going to help you out anymore. And uh, because that's how they go about things. And, um, then they get offended. It's like, well, gosh, I gave you um, $10,000 to I don't know, for college or to fix up your house, and therefore you somehow owe me. And oh, so if I break my leg and I need a place to stay, then you should let me sleep in your spare bedroom for the next 6 weeks. I was like, wait, what? Like, so it's okay to have boundaries, and it's okay to say no. And just because somebody does something for you doesn't mean that you're just eternally obligated, or that they can that's a favor to call in. So okay, Jack, thanks for the live stream donation. He says, Dana, please just a moment, I can send you a new email message, but I need to be sure I don't crack up on you down the road. Okay, okay. I can you send me that message on Discord? And we'll go from there. That's a good point. Warrior makes a comment. He says, well, gosh, is something a request or is it a demand? Yeah, there you go. That's really well said. Okay, let's see. Karen says, how do I teach myself to not react or internalize the grown-up temper tantrums and stand aloof? I'm so reactive. I want to observe, not react, but in the moment I forget. Okay, yeah. This is where it comes down to time and practice. So it helps to to know what you're in for, which is uh, that you're going to feel uncomfortable setting a boundary with somebody, and that in reminding yourself that you're not responsible, you're only responsible for your boundary. You're not responsible for how they feel about it. That's it. And reminding yourself of that sometimes over and over and over again when they're not handling it well. So, and so getting to that place where you become less reactive and more observant, that just comes with time. And even still, there's going to be situations that you are more observant than others, you know? So it kind of giving yourself compassion and grace, realizing that uh, it's a skill like anything else, like playing the piano or anything else. Like, it takes time and it takes practice. But unlike a skill like playing the piano, it's not something kind of learning effective kind of conflict management, or learning to self-soothe our own feelings of guilt or fear. Uh, it's not something that we sit down and practice every day like we do with the piano. That's where it can be so challenging, is we might go months without a situation where we have to use that skill, and then boom, it happens. And then we're really caught off guard by it. So I would say, as you start with this skill, one of the things that can really help, instead of trying to do the whole skill, right? Instead of sitting down the piano and playing, I don't know, a whole song, that you're going to, the first thing to do is just to sit down at the piano. Or in terms of relationships, the first thing to do is just get some space. So being aware of, well, first being aware that there is a different way, that this default path that you've taken so far is just to be reactive. They make some sort of request, you panic, and your default is to say yes, right? Or to go along with it, or to say nothing, whatever it might be. If that's the default, okay, realizing that there's not even just one other way, there's multiple other ways of handling that situation. So that level of awareness is kind of the first step. Then the second step is, when that situation comes up next time, seeing if you can slow it down enough to break that reactivity in yourself, to break that knee-jerk reaction. One of my favorite ways of doing this is getting up, ideally getting up and going to the bathroom, because nobody's going to follow you in there. Uh, you know, you can shut the door, you can lock the door, kind of a thing. So basically, so if somebody has some sort of request, um, either, and if you can't like get up and go to the bathroom, let's say they call you, and they say, hey, can you watch my kids this weekend? And you're like, oh, I really don't want to, but I don't, God, you don't know what to say. You can't think of anything. You freeze. Letting them know, bringing some space and saying, gosh, you know what? I need to check my schedule. Let me get back to you. And then that's it. So coming up with some sort of phrase to give you space to collect yourself, and then come up with a more fully formed answer as to your no. If something happens in person and you're just caught off guard and you're like, oh, I don't know what to say, you kind of go into freeze mode and you don't know what to say, this is where it's good to go to the bathroom. Excuse yourself to the bathroom, um, and wash your hands. Just taking some time, running cold water over your hands, grounding yourself, bringing yourself back into the moment, breathing, and then trying to get out of, because the goal with that is to get out of that fight or flight mode of where you're panicking, or where you're in that freeze mode, which then kind of kicks off that fight or flight. You're trying to break that default of defaulting to say yes, so you can get your brain back online and come up with something to say. And then when you kind of recollected yourself, then going back out and saying, whatever in person to them. Well, thank you, Kenneth, for the live stream donation. He says, you continue to help more and more people each week. Your knowledge is so important, life-changing, and important. In your guided meditations help me get my day started. Thank you so much for both. Well, you are very welcome. And I'm glad that I can help, and I'm glad that this channel helps. It's um this topic, assertiveness, and reconnecting with who who you are, right? Um, Reconnecting with yourself. It's something that I just feel really passionately about, and I guess what keeps me going is it just really chaps me that this stuff is not it's not more mainstream. It's not talked about, and it's not taught, and kind of finding a lot of the, I don't know, information, or a lot of the answers. it can take a really long time, and it's hard enough as it is. It just doesn't need to be such a difficult process. So, and I think one of the best ways to shave years off of the learning curve is is to have these discussions, and not just to hear it from me, but the chat and like different support groups and stuff, and hearing the experiences and the questions and the aha moments and the of others. It's always very interesting, right? Sort of like, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. I never thought about that um, you know, that was me being passive, or that was a certain problem, or whatever. Okay, so let's see. Let me scroll down. Um, Huffle Mom corrects me. 6 months. She says it takes 6 months to recover from a broken leg. Uh, yes, yes, you're right. You're right. Uh, I will say too that the whole kind of giving without expectation, um, there's that's something that a lot of us kind of need to watch out for, because for those of us that are more on that, we'll call it the overgiver side of the spectrum, that's probably how we've been going through life, trying to get our needs met, because we're not getting them met through being assertive, right? Or even probably maybe every now and again being aggressive. We wait, we keep it down, we don't say anything. We're passive, 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 maybe a little passive aggressive at times, until things boil over, and then we explode, and then we're aggressive. And we're confusing that with actually being assertive. Well, I really let them know. I really let them have it. And I did this and I did that. And it's like, no, that's not assertiveness. That's aggressive. Assertiveness is tactful. It's calm. It's, you know, it's clear. It's concise. It's not designed to punish or, set anybody straight. It's designed for clear communication. And it's tactful. So, um, yeah. So kind of learning these new skills. It's a challenge, and it takes time. Oh, that's what I was saying. Sorry, my brain. Um, it's so hot in here. It is so, you guys probably noticed like my hair is it is sticking to my forehead. It's like 85 degrees in here. I am absolutely melting. Um, so I'm sorry, what was I saying with assertiveness and overgiving? Yes. Okay. So for a lot of us, that was probably our primary way of going about getting our needs met. It's sort of like, well, I'm just going to keep giving, right? I'm going to give you my time and my energy and my emotions and my money and my niceness. And I'm going to try to navigate life through niceness, through getting along. But if that's the only tool that we have in our toolkit with how to get through life, that's a problem. And more often than not, if that's the only tool we have in our toolkit, it does come with those expectations, because we were taught somewhere along the line, we picked up the message of this is how you behave, right? That um, you know, you go with the flow. But the maybe the implied message is that if you give other people like maybe it's the message of kind of that twisted golden rule of if you treat other people like you want to be, treat other people like you would want to be treated. And so that's what we do. Well, I'm going to just overgive. I'm going to do all of these things for these other people because that's what I would want. But then if we're building resentment because we're not getting it back, then that's a problem. And our actions of giving is not giving. It's a controlling backwards kind of way of getting our needs met. This it can be, it can set you free in so many ways when we just let an act of kindness be that. It's like a balloon, you kind of like a helium balloon. You're kind of giving this person, here's this act of kindness, and like you're kind of releasing it into the world, and then it's gone. And that's it. And you did the thing because you wanted to do the thing, because you felt like it was the right thing to do, or it was the kind thing to do, or it was the considerate thing to do. And there wasn't this need of, I need to let everybody know that was me. Like, you're not doing it for some sort of ego gratification. You're not doing it so people remember, oh, this person they were so generous, or you're not doing it so you're like, okay, like I did these things for you, so in time I'm going to ask you a favor. Like, that's not why we're doing it. You're doing something helpful because you want to be helpful, not doing it because out of fear, obligation, guilt, pity, um, yeah, any of these things. So it's great because then it sets you free, and then it just changes that dynamic to where it's just a healthier dynamic for everybody involved. UNA says, oh, Dana, I had to quickly change that to Fahrenheit in my head to understand how hot it is for you. Well, you mean Celsius. It's 85-ish. It's 24 degrees Celsius in here. I'm still trying to figure out Celsius. It's throwing me off. Joey says, I need to practice assertiveness. Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill. It can help tremendously when we know what assertiveness looks like, especially like as compared to other forms, like as compared to passive aggressive or passive aggressive behavior, or aggressive behavior, kind of what assertiveness is and what it's not. And like I said, it takes time and practice. I'm sure there's probably stuff online, like different examples. I'll have to see what I can dig up, because it is helpful to see examples and to see it in motion. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll down. That's a good point. Bill says, I would hold pain in from the narcissists, then go off on people who constantly invaded my boundaries. Today, I'm learning a new way from therapy and support groups. That's awesome. And that's a great example. That's what a lot of us do is if we've, for a couple different reasons, if we've had this very difficult person, high conflict person in our life that we never felt we could confront, then then that's all of that frustration and resentment is going to be right there. And so all it takes is for somebody else to cross our boundary, especially if they cross it in kind of the same way, or like in a range of the same way. Boy, Brene Brown refers to this as chandeliering. And it's basically when we're activated. So it's sort of like somebody touching you in a certain way, and you just jump up right to the ceiling and you're holding onto the chandelier. Like, you're activated like that. that happens a lot when there's unprocessed emotions, when there's unprocessed trauma, like these kinds of things. So, but with that said, it isn't necessarily, the reaction isn't necessarily just because you experienced this in the past and now you're taking it out on these current people. Sometimes it's like I was just saying, sometimes a person uh, crosses a boundary, especially if it's that boundary within kind of that same zip code of the boundary that was constantly being violated by this other person, where we become very reactive. So just because you had it happen in the past doesn't mean that it's only related to the past. Like a person could be actively uh, or inadvertently even crossing your boundary now, and you're feeling violated because your boundary was crossed. And so uh, if a boundary is being violated, no matter if it was in the past or the present, it's well, especially if it's in the present, I guess it's important to address that with that person, and to hold the boundary in the future. So, okay, guys, I am going to sign off for tonight. I am melting. Uh, but thank you so much for being here. Uh, thank you guys for everything. And yes. Oh, UNA says, oh my God, I thought you said 45 degrees Celsius. She says, I thought you were in a sauna. I must have misheard you. Too funny. No, I think that would be like the temperature of Mars if that was in Fahrenheit. Like, I don't even know. Temperature conversions are way, way off. But yeah, no, that would be horrible. Uh, but yeah, 24 degrees Celsius, that's enough. There's no airflow in here, and I need to do something about that. So yes. So I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. If you want to be notified when I do go live, you can text the words Dana live, all one word, to the number 22999, and you will be notified. So with that said, as always, you guys are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and have a wonderful evening. Okay. Good night.